What's up, levelers? Welcome back to another episode of the High Level Chronicles podcast, the show where we explore the awesome intersections of video games, cannabis, entertainment, and who the fuck knows what else we talk about. A few weeks, episodes ago, I guess, it was Ancient Aliens. But as always, it's your host, Chris. With me, the ever chill Paul. What's up, bro? What's been going on with you?
A lot. I've had extracurriculars every day this week, even though it was hot.
Oh, man.
Even got a little sick last night. I'm a big tennis player, and I was out in the heat. Did 2 different matches.
Play tennis?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Let me ask, so have you ever played that shit pickleball?
I'd like to. I got a pickleball set, I think 2 years at this point, for a birthday, and I've never played an actual match. I just kind of keep it in my trunk.
My wife always hear people talking about it, and it's like the new big thing, right? I mean, like everybody's playing pickleball, and Thermont just redid their tennis courts as pickleball courts because they got a lot more use out of pickleballs than I guess that they're expecting than they were out of the tennis because nobody ever really was down there.
Pickleball's crazy. So 5 years ago, that wasn't a thing.
I've never played it. I don't even know what the fuck it is, really. I just know it's similar to tennis, but
you kind of have like a wiffle ball. At least my understanding, it's a wiffle like
ball. Yeah, like a plastic.
And you
ball.
can hit it, but like the air really catches it, so it does.
And it's like solid paddles, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like a ping pong, almost.
A little bit, yeah.
It's on the ground and
doesn't bounce like a tennis ball. So like people are really just out there like wailing on it, and it'll go fast but slow down.
It's like when we played wiffle ball as a kid, you threw that ball as hard as you could, but sometimes it just might fucking veer off. That might happen in that game in pickleball. You might hit it and think it's going to go, and then whoop. That's like fun. I think I'd like to do that.
Yeah, if I could ever get some friends together, I got a set, I got paddles. I played sort of once with a cousin of mine who was really into it. He plays like a cage match of pickleball, which is like I guess a different level of it. But I'd be down.
When you say you got a set, is that like 2 paddles, or is that 4 paddles, or is that what is the set?
To be honest, I haven't even opened the box yet.
If you got 4, so I'm just saying. If you got 4, then let's fucking go. Let's try it out. We'll get the wives together. All 4 of us. You know what I mean? We'll fucking figure out if we might have fun. Who knows?
I think it's 2, but like I said, I haven't opened the box yet because I was like,
only got 2,
I'm driving around with it. I got it. Yeah.
But yeah, if you got one, look, if you got a set, then if it's 2 paddles and a ball or whatever, I'll hop on Amazon. I'll find and I'll get a set, 2 paddles and a ball. If we can, get the wives, we'll go down and try it out. Everything is pickleball courts now, pretty much everywhere.
All the tennis courts are pickleball courts where I live. So it's like the big thing right now.
From what I've heard too, they can also mark them as both, right? So like it fits inside a tennis court, so they can put the lines in for both pickleball and still leave it as a tennis court, is what I've heard. At least that's
There's just more lines. So like growing up playing tennis, there was just the tennis lines, and now there's all these like different lines on the court. They make them different colors to differentiate it, but it's
because you all said your teams are like it's just like 2 on each side, and
you're just in like the first boxes there,
right? So you don't have to like run very far. It's not real, it's anybody can play it, is what they say.
A lot of older folks, they're all about it.
Dude, I'm telling you, I watch the news usually every evening, and I see story after story, and it's 20, 30-year-olds out there playing now nonstop. Like,
it's easy on your knees, less running. Yeah.
I'll tell you what, man, before we dive into today's episode with everything, for anybody that doesn't know, today we're going to be talking about like the villainization of cannabis and other drugs, I guess, too, included in that, but just the villainization of cannabis mainly, and what, basically what happened in history and where we are now with it. But before we dive into all that and get into that, why don't we kick things off with our Leveled Up segment, man? Levelers, we want to hear from you. What have you been consuming this week? Whether it be cannabis, video games, movies, TV shows, hit us up, highlevelchronicles.com or HLC Podcast 420 on your favorite social media. We're going to kick it off with you this week, bro. What have you been leveling up on?
Been leveling up on some chocolates. So sea salt,
chocolates,
sativa blend. Really, really just I've been looking for kind of the right blend to because a lot of the indica stuff like just makes you pass out. But I take it a lot at night. But this stuff, you're in a nice flow state. Using that, watching some of the Olympics, some basketball, swimming, volleyball, just whatever they got on, world class athlete. Even I'm not even sure if you've seen some of the badminton. That's just intense.
Dude, the surfing
so fast.
That surfing is what's crazy. But the surfing's in Tahiti, right? I think it's where the surfing
French
is.
Polynesia, so it's French. Yep. What about you, man?
Hey, I've been enjoying some edibles as well lately, man. From Encore, brand Encore. They're like they're both an indica. I got two different types. They're both an indica, but one's like a grape flavor, and one's called like a very berry. And I usually have been taking them like with my foot. I've had some injuries in my foot, so with pain, that's what I take at night to help me get relaxed and go to sleep. Like you said, they'll knock me the fuck out. But they're 40 milligram each, so they're the high dose. I don't know if you've ever taken any of the higher dose edibles. Most people understand, when you get into higher dose edibles, that you get a little bit of that cannabis taste that just kind of bitter sometimes, or leaves like this aftertaste that's not too pleasant, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep,
bro. These not one bit, nothing. It's just like you get lost in them and never even know. Like you could really, they're amazing. They taste great. I mean, they're just like fucking candy. So
nice.
Been eating that at night.
Little fruit snacks.
Yeah, man. Like I said, we also been watching Only Murders in the Building. We had the last season to catch up on because we missed it. We've been watching other stuff. We've been wrapped up in so many of the other shows that we get wrapped up in that we forgot all about. Only Murders in the Building, so we're back to it. Also been swapping between Elden Ring and Overwatch 2 a lot lately. And I'll tell you, I think I'm finally starting to understand Elden Ring a little more. I'm starting to get a little more understanding of it. I actually noticed you've been on it more.
You've inspired me, man. Yeah. So, yeah, we were even playing together once.
Yeah. Yeah.
We need to get together and get some bosses down, man.
I've got my level today. I played earlier today, and I got my level. My level's 55. I don't know if it's good or bad. That's low to most people. So, not still learning my vigor. I got it up to like 40 now. So I'm proud of that and building my strength up. I think right now because I've picked up a lot of amazing weapons. At least what I think look badass, right? But I have to either do well, and then I'm slow as hell. I can't move. Like feels like I'm a fucking boulder. So I'm trying to build my strength now to be able to actually use some of these weapons. But the biggest thing, and now that we're a few weeks past, well, I guess this would be about, since the episode is out, this would be about a month now, but me and the wife went and saw Deadpool versus Wolverine last night.
Nice.
Bro, fucking amazing. Fucking amazing movie. There's not going to give any spoilers away. Paul, I know you went and saw it just the night after. We're not going to give anything away. Not that type of show, but it's been out for a while. Great movie. We're just going to leave it at that. But anyway, Paul, go ahead. What's up?
Number one movie in the world, man. Yeah,
it is.
I can't wait to see it myself. Yeah.
But anyway, let's hear what some of our levelers are saying out there. What do you got over there?
Got a few. We got at DankGamer42 says that they've been indulging in some guava goji and getting into Cyberpunk 2077. He says the trippy vibes of Night City are just next level when you're elevated. Haven't played that game, but I've heard some good things.
Funny story, and I'm all on PC now, but when we've been through our history with video games, everybody knows I was a PlayStation guy forever, and I couldn't get the PlayStation 5, so I got the Xbox. Everybody knows that story. Got the Xbox X. Cyberpunk was the game I got when it came out on that, and I played the hell out of it for a little bit, but it was just, that was when it had all the bugs and issues, and I never went back to it. I loved the look. I mean, it looked amazing. I mean, I can see what he's talking about the night. I mean, yeah, amazing, but I just never went back to it yet. I probably should now because I'm pretty sure the Game Pass works on PC too, so I can just open it back up.
2077 is the most recent one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I heard there was a little bit of bugs, but I'm sure they've.
Yep.
Fixed
it's all been fixed now. Yeah, it's all fixed now. But when I was in it, it was. But yeah.
Nice all right, we also have James F. He says, I've been microdosing with a 1-to-1 CBD THC tincture during my Stardew Valley sessions. Really helps me get into that chill farm life vibe. Which,
that's something you do, right? Aren't you a Stardew Valleyer? Or what do you all call it? What do you all call it?
I love that, yeah. And I don't know if I've ever played it level up, but because like to me, like you have to get a certain amount of things done before the day ends. So I'm always like, do I go mine stuff? Do I chop stuff? Do I collect like fish or whatever? But no, I think that's I fully support that, James F. And then last one is from Chili Chick at Chili Chick 304, who says she's been watching Dark Matter on Apple TV.
Virginia. W.
Hey. Yeah, Dark Matter, which I think we've talked about.
Dark Matter. Yeah, you mentioned that, and I told the wife
Apple
about that.
TV. Yeah, while watching some Northern Lights, she says the visuals and the storyline are just mind-blowing when you're leveled up. Yeah, so if you haven't seen Dark Matter, I really recommend it.
We're getting ready, like I said, before the show, we were actually talking about streaming services and shit. Like we were just talking about the shit we've watched and stuff. And Apple TV is one that we had previously, and that was when like Severance and shit was out on it, and we watched all that, and we dropped it because there was nothing else out, and it's something I need to pick back up again because there's a lot of shows out now that I want to see on Apple TV.
Honestly,
Dark Matter being one.
I've seen maybe half a dozen, probably a little more Apple TV shows. Haven't hated a single one of them. Like,
have you ever seen Sunny?
Banger. Yeah, I've seen Sunny.
And that's one I want to check out. Did you like it? Was it entertaining? Yeah,
I didn't think I'd like it. I like Rashida Jones, and she's the star. And my wife had watched the first episode, and she's like, "I gotta stop. You're gonna love this." And so we like watched the first 3 episodes. I think 4. I think the 4th one just came out. It's like every 2 weeks or something.
I hate that shit. Drop them all at once. Drop them all at once.
And it's funny. We were talking about the streaming services and how a lot of them when it started, they would just here's a dump, here's a whole season, enjoy,
or 2 seasons even. They were dropping 2 and 3 seasons in,
which I really enjoyed because you get the binge and
that was the whole point of streaming services was to binge.
I know.
Now it's turned into a fucking weekly wait, just like regular cable TV. Fuck that.
Yeah, tune in next week for whatever. And I was like, is this cable now? And everything's just...
Bro, and now Netflix? You got Netflix fucking separating everything into season 1, part 1, part 2, part 3. I mean, what the fuck?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that shit pisses me. I'm getting pissed off thinking about it. I don't know why.
I'm trying to remember.
Like this and chill out.
They would have a mid-season finale for cable shows, all throughout, like 2000s, 90s, and I feel like that was like to give like a break during the holidays.
Winter break. Yeah,
exactly. But you don't have to do that if your show comes out like
the whole point. But that was why the streaming services came about and gave you binge watching. But now they've just turned back into fucking cable, separating everything, releasing 1 week at a time or whatever, or dropping. Like what pisses me off is when you have shows like The Boys, right? Drop 3 episodes at once and then make you wait a week for all the rest. Like, what the... Anyway, thanks to all of our levelers out there. We love you all. Thanks for sharing your experiences. Remember, you can always hit us up at highlevelchronicles.com or at HLC Podcast 420 on social media to share what you're leveling up on. Who knows? Maybe on the next episode, yours will be put out there. And now on to the main event. Today, we're going to dive into how cannabis has been villainized throughout the years. We're talking reefer madness, right? The infamous war on drugs. Everybody remember, just say no.
Just say no,
D.A.R.E campaigns. It's been a long. Did I say long? Long road, right? Long road of misinformation and propaganda. So, man, me and Paul, we're going to try to explore how these, campaigns have shaped public perception, policy. What do you think, bro? You want to try and go like chronological order like this? Start at the beginning and work our way through?
I used to be a history teacher, man, so I'm loving telling the story of history of things. And if we start in the 1900s, which I think is a good spot, at about 30 years, about 1900 to 1930, where marijuana, and really cocaine for that matter, were accepted and regular ingredients in different remedies. You would go, and now obviously pharmacological science.
He's high. Don't worry, everybody. He's okay.
Pharmaceutical science has come a long way. And, I think even chloroform was in some.
What the fuck?
Mm-hmm. In
what's this smell like?
Sedatives, and so you were really in the Wild West when it comes to the science of medicine, where just some wild shit would be put into some medicines, and marijuana is included in that. But after the 30s, we had some ugly times. We had the Great Depression, and with that came a lot of job insecurity. And so from the articles that I was reading, there was when a lot of people lost their jobs in the Great Depression. This was also a time with a lot of Mexican immigration from the South. And this started the whole kind of yeah, I mean, yeah. I mean, it really
history
hasn't
repeating
stopped.
itself.
Yeah. And so, but this is like really the first time that you're seeing a large swath of immigrants coming from the South. And yeah, and so, and we'll continue in different ways for the next 120 years. So, but this is you have a lot more people looking for work at a time when there's not a lot of work. And so you had some of the thoughts of, the Mexicans are going to take our jobs, and they bring with them a lot more marijuana. It comes from...
It's crazy how history hasn't changed. That's still the thought today. I mean, I'm not trying to interrupt your story, but seriously, it's like that was in the early 1900s, right? 1930s. Mm-hmm. And to this day, that's what you hear. They're crossing our borders, which they are. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that you always hear they're taking our jobs. They're taking this. They're doing this.
I mean, South Park, the whole parody of it. But that's you start to see some of this racism, this hatred of Mexicans, and they tied marijuana in with that. And so the first time that you see any sort of large rollback on marijuana is 1937. You had the Marijuana Tax Act. And this is the federal government stepping in and criminalizing marijuana. There was also, during this time, the jazz era, and a lot of jazz musicians were associated with marijuana. A lot of those jazz musicians were black. And it's a double dipping on the racism there and the associations with marijuana. And so that really gets us to sale, possession.
You said 1937? That's 1937? Well, 1936, there was like the granddaddy of all. It was Reefer Madness was released.
Oh, man. Was that the 30s?
1936. Yeah. So for our younger levelers who might not be familiar, this was a propaganda film from 1936 that portrayed cannabis as a drug that would lead to violence, insanity, and hold on, insert a dramatic pause here after what you just fucking said, jazz music.
Mm-hmm.
No. This was a propaganda film that portrayed marijuana users as these fucking violent, insane people, and the goal was to scare people away from cannabis by showing this really, really over-exaggerated and false, consequences of its use. And it wasn't based on any scientific evidence, just pure sensationalism. And sadly, it worked. People were terrified of cannabis.
Yeah, went from a very benign ingredient in medication to they would smoke different colors, which was one of the things that really got me. Is that they smoke it and all this red smoke fills the room, and now they are scratching themselves and the eyes pop out of their heads, and it was so like I look at it today, over 100 years later, and I have watched it sometime probably in the last 10 years, and it makes no sense. There's no real plot to the movie. It's just like, hey, look at these fun kids. They're dancing to the jazz music. And then boom, now they're all demons and mentally ill and just out of their minds.
Did you know that Reefer Madness was part of a broader campaign that was led by Harry Anslinger, who was the first commissioner of the U.S. Treasury Department's Federal Bureau of Narcotics? He was instrumental in criminalizing marijuana and spreading all sorts of wild claims about its effects. And that dude was a fucking racist to the core, dude. Had absurd fucking claims. He actually, this is no bullshit. He claimed marijuana would make a white woman want to sleep with a black man.
Yeah,
It's
that
a
was
stark reminder of how drug policy has often been intertwined with, like you said, racial politics. You know, it's crazy to think about how these baseless claims shaped policy for decades to come and affect people still to this day.
Yeah, Anslinger was a name that I came across several times where he really seemed to kick things off of what would be the next 60 years or so of anti marijuana drug policy. But you know, he was the only one. This is the 30s. We had World War II, and there wasn't, you know, our focus was elsewhere. But
Can you
troops.
imagine if that Anslinger fucking guy? Can you imagine if he saw what we're doing right now, playing video games, fucking listening to all kinds of music, having a podcast, enjoying cannabis, you know, in more
Yeah,
ways than ever?
sorry, we're having fun, dude. Yeah, get a grip. You get to the 90s, and now we have the Boggs Act. And Boggs Act put mandatory minimums, which is something that will stay in place and have a number of legal scholars at the time be support. Where if there's any crime with marijuana, again, sales, distribution, possession, use, that you have to go to jail for a minimum of 2 years. And that would just be the start, where it would go up to 5 years, 10 years, up to 20 years sometimes, as this law was used to put away simply people that wanted to use marijuana. This isn't like, oh, they're, you know, were robbing someone and had marijuana on them, or they were doing something violent. It's just simply for marijuana offenses. And there was no, what mandatory minimums do is they really kind of tie a judge hands, where it's like, I can't go against the law and use some mercy or some empathy. Law says I have to put you away a minimum of such and such years. You have to do that. And it's been in use for a long time. And I think just now in the last 10 years, 20 years, we're kind of stepping away from that, that kind of level of thinking.
Right.
19, a little more for the marijuana users. We got hippies, we got anti-war protesters, counterculture, and even Lyndon Johnson and John Kennedy were part of papers that said, I think marijuana is fine. Like, there's no kind of violence, leaving out some of the racial connections that people like Anslinger made. And you really start to see, hey, well, maybe we're turning the corner, but we didn't. War on drugs era.
Oh God! Now you're talking.
Now we're talking Nixon.
Opinion, this is, in my opinion, one of the biggest villainizations of it in our history. Maybe because it's more. I don't even know what the fuck you call it. It's closer to when we were born. You know what I mean? So we remember a lot of it. So
yeah, started in the 70s, and Chris, we love a good war. We love a good war in America, whether it's terrorism, drugs, poverty. We're gonna declare war against it, and it never seems to work out well though. So Nixon, you have the Controlled Substance Act and his war on drugs, and I think this is
a deep dive in that on previous episodes. Real deep dive, really deep dive.
I'm sure. Yeah,
in the 70s, but I think it was what do you think? It was ramped up even more by Reagan, right? In the 80s,
Reagan and Bush. You get the new war on drugs, and now you really start to see, you know, especially even with Nancy Reagan too, just flood the networks with anti-drug propaganda, and I think we talked about it a little bit prior to this episode. Some of the this is your brain, this is drugs, this is your brain on drugs, scrambled egg, and right.
It was a full-scale governmental assault on drug use, which disproportionately targeted minority communities. Again, it says, you know, the war on drugs, that whole, you know, that, like you're talking about the war on drugs, it was devastating, right? That's a good word, I think.
Yeah, and
was it non-violent offenders? I mean, many of them for just simple possession of marijuana ended up with like these really long prison sentences. It didn't solve the drug problem, right? It just created a whole new set of social issues. And like you said, it's only now, even now, just decades later that we're starting to see just a little bit of these, injustices being addressed.
Right. And I know this is a podcast, mostly about cannabis, but if you even expand it to like the crack cocaine epidemic and how the government funded that, which I know is a conspiracy, but there's whole movies about like feature films in theaters.
I wouldn't doubt it one bit.
Yeah, we would fly in cocaine from like Colombia, and it was used to disrupt mostly black households. There would be laws for cocaine users and crack users, where chemically it's the same drug. One's powder, one and snorted, one smoked, and cocaine was more expensive. White users would have it with very little penalties in the courts. Black users would generally have the crack, much higher penalties, same drug. So,
yep,
but
actually,
I don't mean to get too off, but
there's actually a quote from John. What's his name? And I don't even know how to use John Ehrlichman. You know that it was Nixon's.
I didn't hear that name.
So John Ehrlichman was Nixon's domestic policy chief, right? He admitted years later that the war on drugs was designed to target Nixon's political enemies. And he is quoted with saying, "We knew we couldn't make it illegal to be either against the war or black. But by getting the public to associate the hippies with marijuana, the blacks with heroin, and then criminalizing both heavily, we could disrupt both of those communities."
I've heard that quote. Yep. And which is kind of it's wild objectively. And when you look at it from like a political operative kind of point of view, it's like what do you get into politics for? Like, you get into politics to disrupt different communities that maybe have different views than the administration. Like that's like a authoritarian shit,
right?
Where I'm not, like if I were to become president, I would try to help all sort of different communities, regardless of whether they agree with me or not. And maybe if I help them, maybe they're like, hey, maybe I'm not such a bad guy.
Isn't that how the government is supposed to be?
Yeah. Back in the day when they show you those like not ethics, but like the "I'm just a bill" kind of song. You ever heard that? I'm just a bill, and I'm only a bill, and I'm sitting here on Capitol. Like, and they try to show you like through like song and cartoons and like child friendly kind of content of how the government works and what the ideals are, and you just get like that's not really how it always works,
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Let's go back to what we were talking about with the campaign of the 80s, spearheaded, like you said, by Nancy Reagan, which was the Just Say No D.A.R.E era, right? Yeah. So D.A.R.E, which stands for Drug Abuse Resistance Education, it aimed, what its goal was to educate kids about the dangers of drugs. But just like with that old reefer madness bullshit, it used scare tactics and misinformation, lumping marijuana in with much more dangerous substances, right? I mean, like you said, those campaign ads were fucking everywhere, dude. TV commercials, clothing, school programs, even video games. The message was clear. All drugs are bad. You should just say no. It was simplistic. It didn't take into account the nuances of drug use and the reasons why, people might, like substances like cannabis might be useful. Like the "This is your brain on drugs" commercial you mentioned with the fried egg and everything. Hell, I would bet that every 1 in every 5 millennials still have or have had a D.A.R.E t-shirt. Probably buried in their closet
it's
somewhere.
Funny you mentioned that, because they're coming back and being worn ironically by Gen Z.
I mean, and back then it was right next to their fucking Beanie Babies and Pogs.
Yeah. And
jokes aside, right? D.A.R.E was just another program that treated marijuana like it was heroin or fucking crack.
And they really put in the schools. I had a pencil.
The schools,
a
the
D.A.R.E
classes.
pencil. Too cool to do drugs.
You're talking about the D.A.R.E classes? You had the D.A.R.E classes?
I don't know if they're classes, but they're like presentations and stuff. And they gave out
dude, we had D.A.R.E classes. D.A.R.E classes where we had a D.A.R.E officer that came in and gave this whole big anti-drug. Yes, so they had these drug officers that would come in. These D.A.R.E officers, they come into the class. They would they would take us all into like the fucking cafeteria or whatever. If we're in a larger school, it'd be like an auditorium. You know what I mean? Something like that, gymnasium.
Sure, yeah.
And the D.A.R.E officer would come to our school with his big anti-drug message. They made it sound like one puff of a joint would ruin your life and turn you into this couch potato with no ambition to do anything. But they gave this whole presentation. They showed you what it all looked like. They said one puff of this will lead to this, and they had crack or heroin, or it would lead to this, and then they would show needles, and then they would show you all these crazy photos of like arms with all the heroin pokes, and dude, it was crazy. It was stupid. They came and gave a whole presentation on it. They usually had it on a fucking projector. Remember the projectors they rolled out in class?
Yeah.
They had a whole fucking presentation, dude. Whole presentation on it. But you know what? Studies have shown those scare tactics didn't do anything. They didn't work. And in some cases, they might actually have increased curiosity about drugs.
Yeah, because they were over the top. I sort of have an idea of what you're talking about. And when you show a bunch of like 11-year-olds, hey, these are track marks and where you shoot up, right. And like what connection does that make?
It's to like the tactic.
Average middle.
That's all it is. Right? Yeah. It's a scare tactic. But that's what they associate. They said that was the same thing as cannabis. That's what would happen if you smoked one puff of cannabis.
No.
But the problem was, it actually didn't fucking work because most people, once they found out about the lies about marijuana, unfortunately, some of them got to wondering what else they were lied to about with the drugs. You know what I mean? So they started dabbling into some of the other stuff, and I've lost a few friends to, unfortunately went down a path like that, but it did lead to some, but it made people, it backfired on them. It made people more addicted to shit because they thought everything they were being lied to about everything.
Have you ever heard of Len Bias?
Bias, that sounds familiar. It does.
Len Bias, he was a number one prospect coming out of University of Maryland basketball, and he allegedly smoked one puff of I think it was crack or something, laced with something, and had a heart attack and died. And I think this was in maybe the 80s. But they used it where they're like, yeah, see, it's just one puff. Just one puff. It could kill someone like Len Bias, and it'll kill you too. And I was just like, oh, geez, like what the hell? But a lot of my friends back in the day, we just make fun of it though. I was saying before, like they would give out this pencil. The pencil said "too cool to do drugs." You would sharpen it, and then it just said "cool to do drugs."
Right.
Sharpen it a little more, eventually, until just do drugs.
Yep, we got the same exact thing we did, dude. Exactly the fucking same.
No,
exactly. It was fun as hell. We were kids.
Yeah. And so after the new war on drugs, didn't really change. I was growing up in you get the Clinton administration where, to me, pardon the pun, but it seems like the new war on drugs was on steroids. It was everywhere, even in the 90s. We talked about the flat girl who would smoke.
Oh yeah, that might even be like a picture on the couch.
Yeah, it was like, oh,
it would say one joint does this. This is after one joint, is what it's saying. I think this is after.
I don't want to hang out with Lindsay anymore. She smoked a joint, or whatever.
Oh, it's stupid as shit.
Yeah.
Did you know that the war on drugs has been one of the most costly and ineffective policies in American history?
Oh, I definitely believe that, because what did it achieve?
At least that's what Google tells me.
Oh, but no, I mean, you look at all the stuff that came out from Clinton and Bush and Reagan and even before them, the movies, the ads, the D.A.R.E presenters and cops and all that, like that was all taxpayer funded. For what purpose? We are
minorities up.
Yeah, essentially, yeah, to lock up minorities, the political opposition, and you're still seeing like you said, people in jail.
That was the 90s, and it's only recently we're starting to see some positive changes with the legislation and with the decriminalization efforts. And as of this year, 2024, we've seen a pretty significant number of states, legalize marijuana for medical or recreational use or both. We've been a whole down the whole episode about that, but the public perception has shifted dramatically with the majority of Americans now seeing legalization of cannabis and actually psilocybin. They actually support that as well. So mushrooms,
Yeah. And it's kind of funny. On one hand, you have this massive waste of resources to try to criminalize your political opposition, keep kids off drugs. But also, there's a lot of government research that goes into actually trying to figure out what can be the medicinal purposes of things like marijuana, psilocybin. A lot of government research going into finding the psilocybin and how it relates to PTSD and help curing it way more than any sort of pharmaceutical things. A lot for like troops returning home and dealing with that their PTSD from the things they experienced overseas.
Yes, sir. What do you say, man? You ready to close this episode out?
I think so. I mean, we're here now.
I'll tell you, man.
I'll just end with this. In 2020, there's a guy running for president who his name was Andrew Yang, and he said if he got elected on day one, he would annul every single marijuana conviction and be at the jail and high five everyone. And I was like, all right, you know what? I like that. But that's, and he was in the primary for a while. He obviously didn't become president, but that was like a national platform, and people seem to resonate with that kind of message from a guy running for president. But
I don't think anybody's really resonating with anybody this year.
Yeah. What giant meteor 2024?
I'll tell you, man, it's been a long journey with the tides turning. I think the tide's turning. I believe people are starting to see through the decades of propaganda. It's still important to remember and understand how we got here.
Yep, absolutely.
Any closing thought on that?
I mean, it's really been a marathon of where we were to where we are now, and I for one, I'm happy to be living in 2024 compared to 1924. And have the freedom.
You don't want to be living in 1936 with some reefer madness stuff.
Yeah. Hey kids, have you seen this?
I'll tell you what, man. Levelers, knowledge is power, and understanding the history of cannabis demonization helps us appreciate the progress we're making now. Like Paul said, it's great to be where we are. It helps us fight for a more just and informed future. The more we understand the history behind these policies and the misconceptions, I think the better equipped we are to make informed decisions and advocate for sensible policies. And that, I think we're going to wrap this episode. Thanks for tuning in, levelers. Don't forget to check out highlevelchronicles.com. Hit us up on social media at HLC Podcast 420. Stay leveled up. We are out.
Thanks for listening to High Level Chronicles. See you next time.
Thank you again for listening to High Level Chronicles. Please help us grow by leaving us a review wherever you listen to us at, whether it's Spotify, iTunes, Alexa. Your reviews will help our show grow and help us reach a broader audience. Also, we are always looking for new show sponsors, so please reach out if you're interested. You can hit us on our social media or email us info@highlevelchronicles.com. Thanks again for listening.